Hello and welcome to my January reading recap. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in January and my thoughts on them. But before we get into that, I'm just going to say welcome to Based on Faith, where I faith talk about books based on my faith in Christ. So I'm going to be going in the order with which I read this book. So the first book I read in January was A Spell of Good Things. It's a Nigerian political fiction by Ayobami Adebayo. I read it on Libby. So I read the ebook and I finished this in the audiobook. And I have to say that this book is a book I was excited to read because I had just finished reading Stay With Me in December, but it was a very disappointing read. It was quite disappointing. My overall rating for this book is about 2.5 stars, so 3 stars rounded up. And I only finished this book because I finished it in an audiobook format. And I have to say, I was about halfway through this book when the irritation for me set in, because approximately 80% of this book is setting up for a climax. And when you have a book where, about 3/4 of it is setting up for a climax, we've gone wrong somewhere. The synopsis of this book was also basically the last fifth of the book, and it makes me think this was a situation where the author thought of the ending situation, so she just worked her way to the end, as opposed to it being a journey. And this book also has 9 POVs. I feel like when your book starts having more than 2-3 POVs, you've gone wrong somewhere. Yes, there were 2 main POVs, but still 9 different POVs. Do you know what that means? That means when we get to a chapter, I have to start figuring out whose eyes we're seeing the book through, and it's not fun. I have to say, it is really not fun. I remember being frustrated by that, and that was something that could also have been easily fixed. How do you fix that? You simply fix it by saying whose POV we have at the start of each chapter. I feel like that would have lessened my frustration with the book, but she didn't do that, and I was just really frustrated about that. So that was that. The second book I read is The Beginner's Guide to Fasting. So this book is not one I plan to read in January, but I was looking at my bookshelf and I just saw the book there. And I was like, January is a time of fasting. And I was like, why not read this book? Why not pick up a book that promises to guide me through fasting? So I'm not going to say fasting is something that I am new to, but I also feel like nobody is an island of knowledge. Nobody knows it all, and I was open to learning new things. And it's supposed to be a 101 to fasting, but I'm just going to say the author made a good intro to fasting in the first few chapters of the book, and then it just went a bit off in my opinion. I have a full review video of this book that I'm just going to put up here somewhere, in case you want to check out the full review video of the book. And moving on to the next one, I read To Bind Fire. That was the third book I read in January. To Bind Fire is a Christian fantasy and it's authored by D.E. Carlson. I have a relatively spoiler-free review video that is ready for release. So I'm going to be releasing that soon. And it's Book 1 in an Empire of Ash and Song. I would say this book had an interesting premise, and I feel like I was a bit confused by the book, but again, it's a fantasy. It's the first book in a series. I feel like that's bound to happen, and I'm just excited for the clarification I'll be getting in the later books in this series. And I go a bit more into detail on my thoughts about the book in the review video I'll be posting soon, and I read it on Kindle Unlimited. So if you want to read it, it's available on Kindle Unlimited if you have that. The fourth book I read in January is Commission The Awakening. I do not often tab fiction books, so the fact that this has this many tabs on it is the book was good. It was good. I read it alongside a friend. I was visiting her in California. I took the book with me and we just ended up reading it together. It's a Christian fantasy. It's the first book in the Awakening series by Susan Vales, and my copy of this book was gotten from the friend I read the book with. So I really enjoyed reading this. It was really nice also reading it with a friend, and I have a full review video coming soon. But one thing that I really loved about this book is the fact that it had illustrations. I was a bit confused by that, at first, but then I quickly got used to it and I was like, this is good, this is nice. I want to read more books with illustrations. Why do books not have illustrations anymore? The fifth book I read in January is What the River Knows. What the River Knows is book 1 in Secrets of the Now. So here is my copy of the book. I sent this to a friend for a book exchange, so we sort of read it together. It's the same friend I read Commission The Awakening with. It's It really, I was really excited to read it. I was really excited to read it. The cover looked gorgeous. The inside, I think this is a Barnes and Noble special. The inside, like, is just gorgeous, and then this cover here is just wonderful. I tried figuring out what these hieroglyphics mean, but I could not for the life of me figure it out. So if anyone knows what they mean, please let me know. But what the river knows is a historical romantasy. It's relatively clean in terms of romance, except for one heavy makeout scene. It's a bit gory though, so I think my overall rating of this book was like 3.5 stars, and it was 3.5 stars because I think the author could have done a bit more with the premise. Like, the premise of this book is wonderful. You have Death on the Nile meeting the mummy. It was wonderful, but I just feel like she didn't do enough with the magic system she introduced in this book, and the romance between the leads was not well developed, in my opinion. Like, the first third of the book was really good, and I just feel like the rest of the book, the first third of the book, wonderful, but then it wasn't as well developed as I would have loved it to be. And my friend shared the same thoughts with me. It's a book that I read pretty much in 1 to 2 days, and I finished it on my flight back home. I think that's the first time I'm finishing a book on a flight, because typically on flights I just fall asleep. The next book I read, I think this will be the 7th book. If anyone is keeping count, please let me know. It is Check and Mate. So Check and Mate is a young adult romance. It's Ali Hazelwood's only clean romance so far, and it's a romance that revolves around the world of chess. And I'm just going to say, I don't know how to play chess, but after reading that book, I wanted to for a while, for like a few days, and now the desire to play chess has fully died down in me. The book is a bit explicit in terms of language, and I'm just going to say, I don't interact a lot with children, but I don't think they ask about their older sibling and her friend's sex life at the dinner table. Like, that was just one example of like the inappropriate situations in the book. Again, it was also a bit explicit. I read this book in one night, so I got it off of Libby. I had a hold on Libby. You know, the second day it was given to me, I was just like, okay, let's read one chapter. And I'm just going to say, whenever I tell myself, let's read one chapter, I'm lying to myself. I'm always lying to myself, because I don't read one chapter. I finish the book, or I go halfway through the book. This time around, I finished the book, and then at 4:35 a.m., my eyes were all red. I had to go to work the next day. So when I finished reading it at 5 a.m., I was thinking that this was like a 4.5 stars. And then I ran into my roommate the next day, and I was describing the book to her, and in describing and narrating the book to her, because she doesn't read, so she's like, whenever you finish reading a book that's interesting to you, just describe it to me. That's enough for me. Weird, I know, very weird. But I was giving her a rundown of the book, and I just have to say, I realized not much happened in like the second half of the book, because at some point I was like, how do I describe what happened to you? And I was like, nothing much happened. Like, I could describe it to you, but it wasn't a lot that happened. And so my review of this book went down from like a 4-star, 4.5-star to 3 stars, 3.5 stars if I'm being generous. The two things I didn't like about this book was, one, we do not have as much interaction with the male lead as I would have liked. And two, I really hate it when books end in a narration or article-esque style. It really grinds my gears because I want to see what happened. Don't tell me what happened. Show me on paper what happened. Please don't give me a rundown. Yeah, it just really gets on my nerves, but whatever. So the next book I read, I think this is 8. Or is it 7? I think it's 8. But the next book I read is I Contain Multitudes. It's a book that I'm still reading. I'm like halfway through it. It's a science nonfiction by Ed Young. Young is just this very engaging writer who has managed to like get me interested in stuff that I typically am not interested in. And in reading this book, I've been able to see how microbes affect me and the world around me. The book is called I Contain Multitudes, The Microbes Within Us and a Grander View of Life. And I have to say, every time I hear I Contain Multitudes, I just think of the madman that Jesus healed. that whose demons said we are legion. I don't know why. I think of it whenever I hear I contain multitudes. I'm like, this is a copy of I Contain Multitudes. So I'm currently reading it, physical copy, and also on Everand, previously known as Scribd, as an ebook and an audiobook. So yes, I'm reading it on 3 different mediums. And the next book I'm currently reading is Living with Thorns. I think this is 9. Yeah, Living with Thorns is a book that I'm about halfway through. It's a biblical survival guide, and it's a Christian nonfiction by Marianne Froelich. I'm like halfway through it, like I mentioned earlier, and it's just a really great book so far. So in this book, Froelich is leading me through pain and disillusionments to the answerer, because while myriads of answers are nice, they do not help with the pain, but the answerer, the balm of Gilead, can help with soothing the pain of this world. And the last book I'm reading is 10 Words to Live By, Delighting and Doing What God Commands. So here's the book. I have a physical copy of it. Okay. It's a book that I am currently reading with a women's group in church. We are about 3 chapters through. We plan to read the next 2 chapters in mid-February. So I think this is a book that I will be done with by March or early April. So expect the review videos sometime around then. But it's a great book so far. It's a book on Christian theology by Jen Wilkin. And I have to say I was a bit wary when I heard of the book, because I feel like some Christian books tend to be a bit legalistic, and I was like, is this tending towards legalism? But it's not. It's really a great book that has helped me with unearthing God's intent behind the 10 commandments he gave Israel. And now I find that as I'm reading the book, I have to find the line between being legalistic and using the information I'm getting from this book to improve my walk with God. And so those are all the books that I read and I'm still reading in January. You know, if you've read any of this book in the past, or if you're currently reading any of this book, let me know what you think of them in the comment section, and let me know what books you read in January, like which ones you were particularly excited about, because I'm always open to like learning about new books. I'm always looking for new books. Not just that I'm open, I'm always looking for new books. So let me know in the comment section what books you're currently reading this January that you think are exceptional and you would recommend to somebody else. And with that, I've come to the end of this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.